Welcome everyone, Hank Abramson with Business Beer and IP, that's me, a vlog by Henry Martin Law. Today what I want to talk to you about is the difference between LLC, C Corp, and S Corp, and what might be the right entity for your new business. So here in Maryland and in most states, there are a general variety of limited liability entities available. In Maryland, that tends to be a C corporation, an S corporation, and an LLC. What is a limited liability entity? These are entities that allow you to separate potential business liabilities from your personal assets. So if your business happens to get sued and there's a judgment awarded against the business, the individual or entity with that judgment can only get to the business assets, whether that's business monies, equipment, things along those lines owned by the business. But it cannot get to your personal monies, your house, your car, and things along those lines, generally speaking, unless some way they're involved with the business. So what it does is it provides you with some basic protection, almost like an inexpensive insurance policy. Now, there are three types of entities that are primarily selected in most states. Again, I'll be talking specifically about my home state of Maryland, but this is true across many states in the US. There are generally three types of limited liability entities available to choose from. There would be a C corporation, an S corporation, and a limited liability company or an LLC. A C corporation is what historically was used by businesses when they would start up. A C corporation provides that limited liability protection, and so it does offer that benefit. However, it comes with big drawbacks. One is there's two levels of taxation. There's taxation both at the corporate level and at the shareholder level. So for every dollar of revenue that corporation brings in, it's taxed at the corporate level, and then after dividends are distributed to the shareholders themselves are taxed once again on that same money. Generally speaking, for most small businesses in the year 2023, the C corporation is not the way to go, not only because of that double taxation, but because of incredible formalities that are required of the C corporation. You have to operate with a board of directors and officers, a very formal management structure. And also you have to keep very careful books and records, annual meeting minutes. And so there is a lot of formality and structure that you have to adhere to, which can be tough and burdensome as a small business. So often, unless perhaps you're thinking about getting big venture capital money, going public, or perhaps if you're trying to comply with some foreign pact or other reason under the law that you need to be a C corporation, generally small businesses today don't choose the C Corp route. So let's put that off to the side for a second, and now we're left with just the S corporation and an LLC. So let's talk about the S corporation first. The S corporation is also a limited liability entity, as we discussed at the beginning, so it offers that limited liability protection, which is a check, an advantage for it. However, it comes with some of the similar drawbacks as a C corporation. It requires that, generally speaking, that same formality of a C corporation with annual meeting minutes and careful book and record keeping, board of directors and officers, so a strict management structure. An S corporation can also come with other limitations, such as there's a limitation to the number of shareholders that you can have. Although it's 99 shareholders, which is a lot for most small businesses, that limitation still does exist. Additionally, you can only have one class of stock. You can perhaps have two if the only difference is between voting and non-voting. That can be the only difference between the classes of stock. And also, all of these shareholders need to be individuals. They cannot be entities. Now, the one advantage, despite those drawbacks, that an S corporation does have, in addition to the limited liability protection, is it's what's called a pass-through entity. And that means there's only one level of taxation. The revenues that come into the corporation are only taxed at the shareholder level. They pass through. And so they're only taxed at one level, and so that is an additional benefit. So that's basically the rundown of an S corporation. So in some ways, it shares many of the drawbacks of a C corporation and offers some of the advantages of a C corporation. It is a little bit better than a C corporation in terms of its taxation, but again, it does feature many of those same drawbacks. So now you come to the LLC, usually the third option. And LLCs are a wonderful type of entity that came about in the mid to late 90s in most areas of the country. So it's still a relatively new animal to most businesses. But it can be a very effective animal for a lot of small businesses today. So it is, again, a limited liability entity, so it offers, again, the equity holders to have that limited liability protection. Additionally, it is a pass-through entity, so like the S corporation, there's only one level of taxation at the equity holder level. But where the LLC really shines is in its flexibility that it offers. And there's a variety of flexibility that the LLC offers. One would be in terms of management. So unlike the corporations where you have to have a formal structure of board of directors and officers and careful record keeping and so forth, at least in Maryland and in most states, LLCs are entirely flexible in terms of how you want them to be managed. So you can set it up to have a very formal structure with a board of directors and officers and so forth, or you could be member managed by one or more members. You could have kind of an advisory board set up. You could have outside managers manage the company. It's very flexible and almost entirely up to you as to how you want the company to be managed, which is wonderful. It gives a lot of flexibility for small businesses that are just more or less trying to deal with getting up and running and operating the business, let alone, really dealing with the formal corporate record keeping and ongoing tasks. The other area of great flexibility that it offers is with taxation. So by default, a single member LLC will be taxed kind of like a sole proprietorship. It's called a disregarded entity. And that taxation, again, will flow through right to the individual equity holder of the LLC, the sole member. LLCs, the equity holders are called members, which is similar to a shareholder in a corporation context. So if it's a single member entity, again, by default, it will be taxed like a disregarded entity, like a sole proprietorship, flow through straight to the sole member. If it's a multiple member LLC, then it will be taxed by default as a partnership. So again, flow through to each of the members. Now, that's all well and good, and each of those things have their own tax ramifications. But what the LLC does offer is the ability from year to year to elect a different tax status if the LLC would like to, if the members would like to. So from year to year, you could elect to be taxed as an S corporation, for example. You could elect to be taxed as a C corporation, for example. And while most small businesses, again, would not elect to be taxed as a C corporation because of that two-level taxation, there can be tax benefits to being taxed as an S corporation. It can allow you to treat your members as employees and to be paid as employees. And with that comes certain tax advantages. Now, I'm not going to play CPA. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm not going to deep dive into the tax advantages or the potential tax advantages of those. I would encourage you to talk to your tax advisor. But typically, when I have a client coming in to start a small business, typically when we go through those three types of entities, more often than not, the client ends up choosing LLC because of the limited liability protection, the great flexibility that it offers, and the pass-through taxation. In addition to that, because of the flexibility in taxation, there could be even more additional tax benefits. So that's a rundown of the 3 different types of entities that you see in most states. Again, I can only comment to what is here in my home state of Maryland, but that is going to be true throughout most of the country. So I hope you got something out of the talk today and you learned a little something about entity types, limited liability protection, and what might be right for your small business. If you got something out of this video, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps the channel a lot. And I'll see you back here again next week for our next video. Thank you.